welcome to Linguistic Description of English video series. My name is Dedi Kurniawan, and in this video series, I'm going to talk about various topics on linguistics. And in this video today, I'm going to talk about parts of speech as a part of a syntax section of Linguistic Description of English. Let's go with our presentation. In this video, I'm going to talk about parts of speech as the components deal with in syntax. First of all, we know that native speakers of a certain language know that sentences are made up of words. And they also know that the words in a language can be categorized into different groups because they show different behaviors. When I use the word behaviors, it doesn't mean that like human behaviors, but it seems that these words have their own characteristics that will determine how they function in sentence. Let's take an example. For example, in the sentence like the man invented a new engine, the word the man or the phrase the man can be changed into or can be substituted by the word John. So John invented a new engine is also grammatical or acceptable by native speakers of English. But when we change the word John into amazing, for example, native speakers will definitely say that it is there is something wrong with the sentence. It is ungrammatical. And also, when we change it further into at school, and becomes at school invented new engine, native speakers of English will also say that it is grammatical. Okay, so this ungrammaticality is shown by the asterisk that I put on the left of the right. So in order to learn how words are used in a language, you need to know how these words are categorized. Okay, and this categorization will be called part of speech, or in exact term by syntactician, it is called syntactic categories. So what is the objective? By the end of this lesson today, you will be able to comprehend the definition, concept, the principle, and the categorization of parts of speech, especially in English. And then number two, you will be able to identify and categorize English words by means of their syntactic distribution. What are these? We are going to divide this presentation into several topics or subtopics. Number one, we will deal with part of speech, syntactic categories, and then we will talk about the criteria, and also at the end we will also talk about the subcategorization of part of speech. Now let's go on with the main concept. So what is part of speech? So the fact that words can be categorized into different groups or different categories have been recognized at least since the golden age of Greek philosophy. In a long time ago, the philosophers have known that words can be categorized into different groups. For example, Plato was the first one who proposed the division between onoma and onoma nouns. Rema is the category of words that do not belong to nouns and Aristoteles then added another class that we call as junction. And then this categorization seems to evolve, seems to be developed into other Greek philosophers. For example, Dionysius Strax divide them in what we call now as parts of speech. Part of speech are traditionally divided into nouns, verbs, adjectives. So the terms of this part of speech are, I think, quite familiar to you, which it belongs to the concept that we call as traditional grammar. So part of speech tell us how word is going to function. There are several other terms or concepts that people use to reflect. Sometimes we call this word class. Okay? Or in syntax term, tactician refer a more exact term, which is syntactic categories. So in this presentation and on, we will use the term syntactic categories, part of speech or word class in complementary with each other. They similar meaning. And then we know that native speakers have a kind of intuition about this categorization and how words are used in the. When we say intuition, it doesn't mean that they can really tell the categories, because it is a kind of subconscious knowledge. So if you don't learn linguistics or language, you may not know that a certain word belongs to like noun, pronoun, adjective, and so on. But they have this intuition, they have this feeling, they have this impression, even though they cannot really talk about that in a linguistic term. This phenomenon is called mental lexicon. Okay, and then Kani says that if we have categories for words that appear in certain section and categories, and categories for those that don't, so we can make generalization. Is called as rules, grammatical rules, but the behavior of different words, word types. Okay, maybe you remember this model or diagram from the previous video. This is the model of a syntax called PNP model, in which the first part or the components, the constituting component is called lexicon. So this is the lexicon that we mentioned before, referring to the fact that native speakers of a certain language have this kind of mental lexicon, this kind of characteristic that will be used when they generate or create. Okay, so this is kind of the ingredients of the rules that we are going to. So mental lexicon can be simply defined as mental dictionary that contains information regarding words' meaning, pronunciations, and so forth. So when I say dictionary, it doesn't mean that in human brain there is a kind of book, kind of dictionary, but instead it is a kind of mental knowledge. It's kind of mental information that is stored in human brains that contains information of a word and its meaning, but not also its meaning, but also the pronunciation, so the characteristic of the grammatical or the syntactic characteristic of word. For example, we know that a noun should use in conjunct with a verb and so on and so on. This is subconscious, meaning you cannot really explain it in terms that the native speakers cannot really say, oh, this noun should be grouped with verb and so on and so on. Instead, they know that they have a feeling, they have an intuition that will be that a certain word should be treated in a certain way. And these lexical entries or the words that that is stored in human mind contains information on how it behaves in a language. This information is projected into the text of sentence. Um, there is a principle in PNP model called projection. I'm not going to talk about this a lot because there will be video, another video for this concept. Okay, but for your information at this point is that certain word has a certain characteristic that will be projected to sentence in terms of how they combine with different words to construct a sentence. This is another example from Carney on that is showing us how certain word can be combined or cannot be combined with words. Okay. Okay. In traditional grammar, part of speech are usually determined based on semantic criteria, based on the meaning. For example, we traditionally say or we conventionally say that noun refers to things. Okay, verbs refer to action, jump, write, so on. Adjective refers to attribute of something, and adverb usually refers to manner, for example, quickly, walk quickly, dance beauty. However, some evidences show that semantic criteria are not the best way of identifying part of speech. There is something wrong with the criteria. Let me show you. For example, here are some sentences from Carney. The first sentence, sincerity is an important quality. In this sentence, sincerity should be considered as noun. It belongs to noun category, but we have a feeling that the word sincerity refers to attribute of somebody. It's a characteristic, right? But it is not adjective. It is a noun. Another word, assassination of the president. Assassination is a noun, right? That is because of English, no, it is, but it actually refers to action instead of thing. And in the sentence, Tucson is a great place to live. Tucson is a noun, but we know it is a name of place and it should refer to a place. And then, how are words categorized? There are many ways of categorizing words. Number one is semantic criteria that we have discussed just now. And then, actually, there is also what we call as phonological criteria. And in linguistic, it's called prosody. For example, in the word like present, where the stress is put in the second syllable, native speakers of English know that it is verb based on the prosody or based on the stress put in the syllables. In contrast with present, where the stress is put in the beginning of the word or in the first syllable. When somebody says present, it can refer to either adjective or noun. And then also in control versus control. Control is a noun, well, control, where the syllable is put in the second syllable, it is a verb. But we can also use two different way of categorization, which is morphological and syntactical criteria. So we know from the morphology that a certain affixes like full, ian, and so on can indicate a certain part of speech. For example, beautiful is adjective because full is an affix referring to adjective, and beautify is a verb because of fine affix, and then beautification is a noun because ian is a derivation for a noun. And then we are going to focus more on the next criteria, which is called syntactic criteria. So according to Genativis syntactician, word categories can be best determined by the so-called distributional criteria. There are two distributional criteria, which is morphological and syntactic criteria. Let me explain one by one. Number one is morphological distribution. There are affixes, that is prefix or suffix, and other morphology that appear in a word can be used to indicate the part of speech of a word. In morphology, you have talked a lot about derivation and inflection, and it can be used to indicate the kind of part of speech that a word belongs to. But we will be more focused on the so-called syntactic distribution. According to Carney, syntactic distribution refer to the fact that what other words appear near the word. In other terms, the order of the word in a sentence. Um, in categorizing part of speech or words, we can we usually or we normally divide them into several part of speech, and the major part of speech that we know so far is noun, verb, adjective, adverb, and preposition. And then we can also categorize these words into the so-called open and closed categories or closed groups. Open category is the word that can further be developed by adding more words. Like for example, noun is an open category because every day people invent new nouns. Every day people invent new verbs. However, it is most unlikely for people to invent a new preposition or complementizers or determiners. So that's why we call these categories as closed. And then we can also further divide the words into lexical and functional categories. Lexical words are the words that have meaning by itself. For example, noun have meaning by themselves. But preposition do not have meaning by itself, because it will depend on the context. For example, the word in uh, on Monday refers to the time, while on the table refers to the place. So functional categories are the words that cannot be determined by itself, but it has meaning only when it is put into context. Now, let me show you some categorization, some distributional criteria of a noun. For example, noun can be indicated by the derivation that it has. For example, men, nest, it, ian, and so on and so on indicates that these words belong to noun categories. Then also plural s can be attached to only nouns. Okay. In terms of syntactic distribution, noun can be preceded by either a preposition or determiner or adjective or combination of those categories. Okay, and then I'm going to talk about distribution tests in the next video about consistency, but we can determine noun using several distribution tests, for example, noun replacement and one replacement. Okay, and then this is the distributional criteria of a verb. I'm going to put this into my presentation slides later for you to learn. This is the adjective. This is adverb. Okay, so we have some criteria. Let me now talk about some functional categories because functional categories is relatively more complex and more difficult to explain. But we can divide them into several ways of categorization. For example, some syntactician will divide them into determiners, preposition, complementizer, conjunction, negation, auxiliaries, and modals. You can see these are some example of these categories. And then the next, I'm going to talk about preposition, as preposition is one of the most kind of the most discussed part of speech, the most discussed function category. Preposition always occur before noun phrase. Example words like from, under, and so on. And determiners are words that can be used to specify nouns, and it is relatively a larger term because under this we have articles, quantifiers, numerals, deictics, and possessive pronouns. So this belongs to determiners category. And then we have conjunctions. Okay, and we use conjunction to connect two more of phrases on equal level. For example, noun with noun, book and pants. Adjective with adjective, it's expensive or cheap. But we cannot say happy but work. It is ungrammatical because happy and work belong to part of speech. And we can even also use conjunction to connect two sentences or two clauses. I love apples, but I don't like orange. And then even we can further develop subcategorization in order to divide these groups or these categories into smaller units, because even though several words belong to the same groups, we can even identify some differences in the way it behaves, so we can further divide them into categorization, and we can divide this based on the features. The term is the features, referring to the characteristic or of the subcategory. For example, we can divide nouns into plural or singular in terms of the section that it can have, and then countable versus uncountable or mass nouns, proper noun versus common nouns, and we can even further divide them into pronouns or anaphors. This is terms, so I'm going to talk about these. So for example, we can say some books, but not a books, because determiner a can only get along with singular, not plural. we can say information but not informations because the inflection us can only occur with countable, while information uncountable. And then John versus, we cannot say the John because John is proper noun, and we do not use determiners with um, proper noun. And this is an even more complex subcategorization of verbs because we can define verbs into tense or tenseless, finite or infinite. For example, we can say she left, and left here is a tense verb, while she will leave, leave is tenseless or infinite. Okay, but we cannot say she will left because left will is a model, and model can get along with um, infinite word, infinite verb. But when we put tense there, like past tense here, it will create ungrammaticality. We can also divide the verbs into the number of arguments of the number of object it can contain. For example, we have transitive verb like arrive. Is ungrammatical to say Jen arrive Alex because arrive is a transitive verb that do not need or do not require object. While visited in contrast is intransitive. So we can say she visited mom, but we cannot say she visited because there is something missing. There is the object. Visit needs an object, grammatical. And we also have the third subcategorization, which is called ditransitive, in which a verb like noun, like put, needs not only one object but two direct and indirect objects. So we can say I put the book on the table, but we cannot say I put on the table because the native speaker will say, "Oh, I need something. What do I put?" So it seems that the word put, the verb put, needs two kinds of objects. There is the thing that the person puts, then the place where it is put. Okay, and this is called ditransitive. So I think this is my explanation about part of speech or syntactic categories. As a summary, words can in a language can be categorized into parts of speech, or we call them in syntactic categories. And then distributional criteria, that is morphological and syntactical, are the most reliable criteria in categorizing the words. And then we can further divide the words into subcategories based on how they behave. Have shown some features that can be used to classify or to subcategorize these words. And the knowledge of this categorization is important since syntax deal with how words are combined into sentences. That is, in order to be able to tell why a certain sentence is grammatical or not, we need characteristic of this. Okay, I think that's all, and these are some words or some vocabulary that you can learn from this presentation. This is the bibliography that you can further read information. I think that's all my presentation. Thank you very much. We'll meet again in different videos. Thank you very much for watching until the end. Jadi